Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. I'm Matt Perkins, joined once again by BadgerBlitz.com editor and publisher and editor-in-chief and a little bit of everything, John McNamara. Great to see you again, buddy.
Always good to see you, Matt.
Oh, John, it is May. It's kind of the doldrums. Spring ball is past, but official visits are coming up. Somehow, though, the team keeps changing as they've added another wide receiver to that room, Dekel Crowdus from Hawai'i, previously at Kentucky. John seems to be more of a slot type, but I think it's interesting. I think there was a post in the Den. Make sure you're subscribing to BadgerBlitz.com to get in on the message boards, the best message boards you will find anywhere, about people always still wanting that big body receiver. There's only two receivers on this roster under 6 feet right now. And so I think Crowdus actually fills a position of quasi need in the slot because of the injury to Kekahuna, and Kineberry Johnson, while having a lot of promise, still very young.
Yeah, that was kind of my first thought, Matt, is what's the status of Tretch Kekahuna, who missed, really the bulk of spring camp. And, that's just real pure speculation, right? I mean, Wisconsin hasn't come out and said, this is the injury, this is the time frame. It's just kind of where your mind leads if you've been doing this for long enough. You talk about, Crowder, 5'11", 170 pounds, like you said, Matt, it kind of fits the mold of a slot receiver. Now, I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly how that Wisconsin offense looks. We got to take in spring and see a little bit of the Jeff Grimes offense. Obviously, it's going to take another step in the fall. Is that another body to add because you're worried about the depth there? I'm not sure, because you have a guy like Tyrell Henry, I think, had a really good spring. You could potentially put him in the slot. Kineberry Johnson is a guy that you could put in the slot. I think this is an addition of just another body there, because they ended spring camp with just 8 scholarship receivers. Crowdus gives you 9. That's certainly not a Phil Longo number, but probably more of a Jeff Grimes number. But I think it's just another experienced body there. I like the speed that he brings, potential big playability. So again, I think it's more towards of just we have a potential need there. Let's add another experienced body. He's played in the SEC, had a really good year at Hawai'i. So let's just bring him in and see kind of where he fits in there.
Do you think he factors into the return game at all?
I certainly wouldn't rule that out. Do you really want to have Tretch back there, a guy who's, missed the spring? I don't think you want to put Vinny Anthony back there. I want
to put Vinny Anthony back there because I think he has the highest. Well, I don't know necessarily the highest upside, but I trust him back there. I trust him to not fumble the punts. I trust him to if he has to take a big hit, not fumble the ball there. And, there have been issues, even just fielding punts. So I don't hate it personally.
Well, where's Jack Dunn when you need him? I have a hard time putting my best receiver, best cornerback, my starting strong safety, Hunter Wooler. And I think
Leonard beg to differ.
Yes. And there's how many Jim Leonards come through your program? One. So I just would be really upset if I was a Wisconsin fan and week 1, Vinny Anthony is stumbling off the field because he got nicked up returning a punt. That would make me upset. But he has big playability, right? So I don't know. You got to kind of weigh the pros and the cons there. I just think that a roster like Wisconsin's or a Big Ten roster should be able to provide you someone who can field a punt, return a kick, or reverse side. I know, Matt, not to get you upset, but someone who can kick the ball without kicking it out of bounds. Wow. I had to take a little shot there at you.
You'll get me riled up. If you want to get me angry about one thing, you know exactly the buttons to push, John. All right, John. Well, let's go from the present of the offense with Crowdus to the future of the offense with some visitors who are coming in the next couple of weeks. Already had some key visitors from Chicagoland, including Gavin Mueller, who's going to be announcing here, in like a week or so, I think, John, the tight end. But the Badgers have a couple of other, I guess I would say, backup tight end options. I don't know if they're backups. I think they're definitely trying to get a couple tight ends here in this class, John. So let's go position by position here. And I'm going to start with the tight ends who are going to be visiting over the next couple of weeks. May 29th, big weekend for the Badgers. They've got 2 tight ends that weekend who will be there with Ryan Hopkins, the committed quarterback, Jack Sievers out of Washington State, and Jack Janda from Detroit. A couple of Jacks cutting it up in Madison. John, how much will the potential commitment of Gavin Mueller have on this group? And then B, we've also got Dominic Berry from Indiana, June 6th. Is this going to be kind of a thing where like they know they've got 1 scholarship set aside from Mueller, and then second one would be first come, first serve? Like, how do you think this sort of tight end is playing out here?
I think that's Wisconsin's, ideal situation, right? If you lock up Mueller on May 14th, when I think he's getting ready to announce, and then, you bring in, your next 2 guys, what you talked about, Jack Sievers from the West Coast there, and then Jack Janda, kind of a long-time target from Michigan. Like I said, I think Wisconsin would love to be in that situation. Just my gut tells me that like Colorado might be the pick for Gavin Mueller. Most recent official visit, they have certainly prioritized him. I think there's a lot of things that appeal to him there. But Wisconsin's been there from the jump. We talked about that last weekend. So, let's say Mueller does go elsewhere, then, you're looking at your next 2 on the board there with Janda and Sievers. I think Wisconsin's in a really good spot with Sievers. And if they go into that weekend still needing their first commit at tight end, I think they really kind of turn the screws on him. I know that first visit that he took in the spring, I shouldn't say first, I'm sorry. It was his second visit that he took in the spring. That was big. That one really connected with him. He connected with Tucker Ashcraft, another kid from Washington. And, you don't get a ton of kids from Washington, but that is a very much, hey, you could be, my mentor that first year here while you get acclimated at Wisconsin. So I think Wisconsin's got some momentum in his recruitment. Janda, I think, is a little bit more wide open. I think, his recruitment is a little bit more Midwest focused. So we'll see what happens. I do think that, if they really put the heat on, and I expect that they will. I expect everyone on that May 30th, May 29th, whatever you want to call it, official visit weekend, those are Plan A, tier 1 guys that they're going to really push hard to get committed. And if you look at past years, specifically the last 2 under Fickle, they've done a really nice job from that first weekend landing a handful of commitments. Like I said, those are their top guys, and they're going to push to get them. Should they go beyond that, Dominic Berry certainly got to look at. Wisconsin and Kansas has been the 2 schools to watch in his recruitment. So, but you've seen things move really quickly where there are guys in that second weekend, and I'm not saying specific to Berry, I'm just saying specific to how the last couple cycles have gone where, hey, we filled up first weekend. We don't have room for you to come. Sorry, we're filled up. Again, I'm not saying that about any specific prospects or positions right now, but things move quickly in June. And, if you want your spot at Wisconsin or school of your choice, you got to kind of make your decision quick because things move very quickly in June.
I think that that goes, definitely hand in hand with the next position, which would be running back. Their top 2 guys at the running back position, Amari Latimer and Jamal Rule, will also both be there for that May 29th, May 30th weekend. And I think that, in an ideal world, they'd like to come out of that weekend with both of those guys and, tell the other running backs who are potentially coming on officials, Ryan Estrada and Nelson Wheeler, thanks, but no thanks. We've got our 2 guys. But I guess I'll start by asking you, John, out of Latimer and Rule, who would you expect, who do you think is a higher likelihood of coming out of that weekend with a commitment?
That one's tough. I think there's a lot of moving parts there. Some stuff that's happened, some stuff I think will happen. I'd probably say Amari Latimer. He was in town in the spring. He was there for the spring showcase. Got a chance to see his brother play. His brother put together a really strong spring. His brother would have that additional year. So his brother's got 2 years left. So their timelines would align where they'll have 1 year together if he winds up at Wisconsin. I think that Wisconsin just done a really nice job prioritizing him. He's look, I was talking to guys where, a year ago at this time, they were talking about Amari Latimer and how much they wanted him in this class and, where he kind of ranked on Wisconsin's running back board. So I think that effort has certainly put Wisconsin in a really nice position heading into June. If you were to get a guy like him, would you go for a second back? I think they would if they were able to get a guy like Jamal Rule. I think those guys would complement each other well. Rule, to me, would be, Latimer, I think, is an excellent fit too, but Rule, specifically in this Jeff Grimes offense, I think would fit very well with what they want to do, that running style that he has. He's a bigger back. I think there's more weight to be put on him. And I think if you could snag those two that first weekend, you feel really good. And you'd certainly take two after not taking one in last year's cycle. And then, this running back board specifically, particularly, I should say, reads to me of, this is, I guess, my opinion, a priority list, right? Where you're getting your top two guys. And then should you go beyond that, Estrada's a guy that's there in that next weekend, although I think Alabama just offered him. So I think his stock is maybe a little bit more on the rise. And then a guy like Nelson Wheeler, who they're bringing in that third weekend. Typically for that third weekend, they put guys there as, we'll use this weekend if we need to. But if you looked at last year's cycle and the year before, there was a handful of guys that we lined up as scheduled third weekend guys, and spots filled up, and they no longer needed to take those visits on Wisconsin's end. So, again, things will move quickly. We'll see what happens. But, they're getting, in my opinion, their top two guys on campus right away that May 29th, May 30th weekend.
All right, well, let's go to the wide receiver position. They've already got one commit in Tayshawn Bardo, who's going to be there for June 6th, but their longest time and probably number one priority at the wide receiver position for a long time in this class has been Zachary Washington out of Chicago, and he'll be there that first weekend. Obviously, I think, John, he's still number one on the board for the team. How else do you think they're going to try to fill out this class? We know that Owen Cabell from my hometown of Nashville is also going to be visiting the weekend of June 2nd, and Dallas Dickerson is on that third weekend. He's out of Georgia. Washington and Bardo, do you think they'd be happy with a class of two? Do you think they'll try to push for three?
I think they'll push for three. That's another position that's kind of been lightly recruited in terms of what they've done high school rise. Transfer portal wise, they've certainly attacked it in, all three cycles since Luke Fickle's been here. Like you talked about, Matt, you start with Bardo, so you have a piece in place that you feel pretty good about, obviously. Zach Washington, long-time target. He is in the Gavin Mueller, King Liggins boat of, these guys have been well established for well over a year. With guys like Mueller, guys like Washington, guys like Liggins, with the amount of times they've been on campus, I think you wonder why they haven't committed yet. So another visit, does that put it over the top? I think they've seen and done just about everything they can in Wisconsin, but I do think Wisconsin's in a good spot with Washington. I think he's very much atop that board there. Not only do they have the relationship with Kenny Guyton, but now Jordan Reed's done a really nice job there of both of those guys attacking. You saw a picture of them going down during this this live eval period and spending some time with Washington. But Jaden Pettit is another kid that they've done a really nice job with, a big body boundary option out of Florida. Was on campus just recently, going to take that official visit. Wisconsin feels like it's trending in that recruitment. So they certainly wouldn't turn a guy like him away. Owen Cable's kind of in that same boat of, do you like the size he brings to the table? I don't think he's in the same class as Pettit. So I don't know. Could this get to 4? Probably not, but I think 3 is a very safe number. And then, we mentioned Dallas Dickerson that last weekend, that June 13th slot. His recruitment's kind of starting to heat up. I think we just bumped him up to a 4-star. Oklahoma just offered. So I think his recruitment's maybe taken not necessarily a different turn. I think that he will visit, but June 13th seems light years down the road compared to June 1st, to be real honest with you, in terms of a recruiting calendar.
All right, John, we saved the best for last. It's time to talk offensive line. Maddox Cochran, who's already committed, the tackle out of Virginia, will be there the first weekend. Second weekend, they've got committed offensive lineman Ben Novak. A couple other offensive linemen visiting that weekend of June 6th, Jelani Miller and Marky Walbridge out of Arizona and Boston, respectively. Those two guys, where do they project tackle, interior offensive line, and how do you think that the coaching staff and Coach Blas are trying to sort of finish out this offensive line class where they have two solid pieces to begin with?
Yeah, and I talked to Maddox Cochran after he committed, or just before he announced, and I always like to ask guys, how many guys do they want to take? Have they communicated that to you? And he said, we're looking for one more guy after me now. A tackle certainly makes sense, but you look at a guy like Miller, who's going to be, that June 2nd weekend. When I talked to him ahead of that official visit, he talked about, Coach Blas thinks I can play all 5 positions on the offensive line. So that position flexibility, I think, is really nice with him. I think that, he could play tackle if he needed him to. He could play on the interior if he needed him to. So I think you like that about him. Walbridge definitely feels like a tackle to me. And I think adding a tackle likely makes the most sense in this class. You look at the current roster, that's where they're a little thin at right now. And then a guy like Wilson Zaire, kid from Germany who's going to squeak in on the weekend of June 2nd. I shouldn't say the weekend. That's a midday visit or a midweek visit. So they've got some guys to try to fill out that last spot. It's tough to see. I feel like Miller might be the most realistic option right now, although there's some schools on the West Coast like USC they're pushing hard for him. So it'll be interesting to see who Wisconsin gets to fill out that class for on the offensive line.
Yeah, I feel like they definitely need interior players still. Novak, yes, I could see him playing interior, but I kind of feel like he's a right tackle in a lot of ways. So I'm curious to see whether Cochran's obviously definitely a tackle. You just look at his body type, you look at his wingspan, and just sort of his overall athleticism. That he's absolutely going to project to being a tackle at the next level. So we will see how it shakes out there. We'll talk defense next week. Obviously, quarterback is a closed question for now with Ryan Hopkins, but as we've stated more than once here, there's a long time to go before signing day. So, John, though, I think the last thing we want to get out of here on is a big flurry of offers going out to 27s and 28s here in the past couple of days. What to you stands out? What are the most notable ones of those of this big offer list that has gone out of late?
Yeah, their coaches are able to get out on the road right now, and I think that if you're watching Twitter or whatever you're watching, hopefully our message board, that you'll see that coaches are out there watching guys work out at times, getting a look at them in person and extending offers. I think, like you talked about, Matt, there have been some 27s, some 28s. If you look at those 28s, I update those profiles after those offers come in. I mean, those are kids, Alabama, Georgia, some big time schools around those 28s, obviously, if they're picking up offers this early. I think the two that popped for me were actually 26 kids. Wisconsin sent out an offer to a projected defensive lineman and then another offer to a projected offensive tackles in that 26 class. So those are kids that you try to check up on right away to see, one, you try to piece together why Wisconsin's offering at this point. I think, specifically at that defensive tackle spot, they need some help there. And then offensive tackle, we talked about, there's still a need there too. So those 26s are guys that I'm kind of monitoring right away because, just as quickly as they get offered, it wouldn't be surprising to see, hey, I'll be up there the second weekend of June, or I'll be up there the first weekend or last weekend of May. So those are the two offers I'm kind of have my eyes on moving forward here.
Excellent. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on all the offers moving forward and much more over at BadgerBlitz.com. Make sure you are subscribing to not only that, but here to the YouTube page as well. We're here talking about whatever I feel like, let's face it, every week here on Badger Blitz TV. So like, subscribe, rate, review, unsubscribe, resubscribe, re-rate, re-review, all that good stuff. Make sure you are subscribed to BadgerBlitz.com. And until next time, we will see you in the den.